Hello my dear friends, and happy Cinco de Mayo. It's also one day after Star Wars Day, which is Revenge of the 5th, although some fans prefer tomorrow, Revenge of the 6th. In either case, today we have a lot of Star Wars news, and we begin with some comments made by Kathleen Kennedy about what she wants to do with Star Wars. Instead of doing one movie every year, she wants to return it to the old days, where it was once every 3 years. But instead of saying this is what George Lucas did, instead of saying this is how we used to do it, she's likened it to James Bond, looking at that franchise for whatever reason, and saying she wants to eventize Star Wars in the same way. In her own words, she says, "I've often brought up James Bond, that's every 3 or 4 years, and there wasn't this pressure to make a movie every year. I feel like this was important to Star Wars, we have to eventize this." I mean, if you're focusing on good storytelling, that's not a bad thing, but why compare it to James Bond? That's literally how Star Wars used to be. The original trilogy was 77, 80, and 83, and of course the prequel trilogy was 99, 2002, and 2005. And then under Disney for the sequel trilogy, it was every 2 years. 2015 we had The Force Awakens, 2017 The Last Jedi, and 2019 The Rise of Skywalker. So she wants to go back to every 3 years, eventizing the Star Wars franchise. And for a lot of fans, I've seen a lot of fans online talk about this is just another example of Kathleen Kennedy not being in tune with the fandom, being very tone deaf as to what Star Wars needs. I've been trying to be very optimistic about the future of Star Wars, especially on the movie side of things. The next 3 films do sound like they might be very exciting, and I am keeping an open mind. I want Star Wars to succeed. I want to say that every Star Wars project was amazing, but unfortunately that's not a reality at the moment. But just before we move on, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of her comments about Star Wars needing to be a bit like James Bond in terms of release schedule? In other Star Wars news, Natasha Bordizzo has posed with a green lightsaber for Star Wars Day, but this is not Ezra's lightsaber. We did see in the exclusive footage shown at Star Wars Celebration, she is still wielding Ezra's lightsaber, but the one she posed with in this Instagram post is not Ezra's. The hilt is different, it doesn't have an angled emitter, but very cool nonetheless. And so now guys, ever since Andor Season 1 came to an end, I've been covering the various news updates when they come up. From filming in Valencia to here in the UK, rumours about what's going to be in the second season, teasers by Tony Gilroy to do with connections to Rogue One, the Death Star, Yavin 4, the return of Kino Loy, and more. There has been quite a bit, and a lot of Star Wars fans, myself included, have a lot of faith in Tony Gilroy getting Season 2 right. The first season was arguably one of the best things Disney Star Wars has done, so Season 2 of Andor is going to be so exciting. And one promise of the second season is more familiarity, much more familiar Star Wars territory. And with this comes the possibility of cameos. I would expect someone like director Krennic after the Season 1 post-credit scene of the Death Star, maybe Tarkin, maybe a bit of Darth Vader like in Rogue One, but arguably the biggest character who's a question mark is Erso. Well, Felicity Jones has finally answered if she's going to appear in Season 2, and I've got to say, it doesn't sound like she's playing coy. She just comes out with the truth. Let's dive into this. If she were to appear in the second season, she could not interact with Andor, but considering Saw Gerrera is going to have a lot of screen time in Season 2, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing if she appeared, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. The article says the following: Jones made her debut in 2016 as Erso, where she led what many fans consider to be one of the best movies under Disney, but sadly by the time the credits rolled, both Jyn and Cassian were dead. But what about earlier in the timeline with the Andor show? Well, the time period of Andor Season 2 is after Saw Gerrera abandons her. She's left on her own and eventually ends up in prison, and then the events of Rogue One, but there still could be more, and Felicity wants it. However, she makes very clear she was not contacted about Andor Season 2. It was earlier in the week on Wednesday when she spoke with BBC's The One Show promoting her action thriller Deadshot. Felicity Jones once again commented on her possible return to Star Wars, but she shot down all possibility. Here's what she said: "I'm afraid to say I won't be, but I still have hope for Erso at some point to make a comeback, but no, sadly I won't be." She went on to say that she did enjoy playing the character, she had a great time, but the project was, quote, "a massive challenge." She says, "Yeah, I did. I mean, it was a massive challenge. I was doing a lot of martial arts in preparation for it. I mean, it's on such a huge scale, I was quite in awe of the whole thing, honestly." Now, while Jones showed excitement for the idea of Jyn showing up again, she went on to say how she kind of put the character to bed, and then you're ready for the next challenge. After filming Rogue One, mentally she was done, so she never expected to come back. Her character died, and so she moved forward, not thinking about it, not even considering the possibility of a return. Diego Luna is a big fan of Jyn, but also Felicity, and I remember during the press tour for the Andor show, Diego did say he wants to call her. He did miss her very much on set.
And I miss her a lot. to be honest. I mean, she's just amazing, and what she's done is spectacular, you know. She just got me really sad. It's been a long time since I spoke to Felicity. I'm gonna call her.
Yes, please do.
As soon as I'm done with this carpet.
In the past, Felicity has teased there is unfinished business for Jyn, despite being dead, and many fans wondered if she's big enough of a character to return via the world between worlds, not reviving her, but rather seeing her sacrifice again. I just kept saying that reincarnation is totally possible in the Star Wars universe, so I feel there's unfinished business for Jyn, for sure. I think it'd be fascinating to see her get older and wiser, and fighting the dark forces in the universe, with which there are many it seems. But I disagree. As much as I love Jyn Erso, I just don't think she could come back. Earlier in the timeline in the Andor show, sure, but as she says, she was not contacted, so it's a no. Unless, of course, she is playing coy, but I don't think so. I simply don't think she's part of it. Considering she doesn't meet Cassian until Rogue One, there'd be very little story there, because she's no longer with Saw. Her dad Galen Erso could be a possibility though. And I will say, based on what we know about Tony Gilroy's writing style, about how he's writing the Andor show, it would be out of left field if Jyn Erso is even mentioned. She's not important just yet. There are so many other characters familiar and new that Tony wants to focus on. He has mentioned progressing Luthen's story, as well as that of Cassian, Mon Mothma leaving the Senate and meeting Andor, as well as other characters we met in Season 1, and the trailer shown at Celebration really demonstrates that. There's even going to be more story for Wilman Pack, so I'm very curious and hyped to see what they explore, but Jyn Erso is not going to be one of them, at least I don't think so. Now, just like many Star Wars actors who gave so much to the franchise, even if it's just with one film, Felicity on many occasions has said she is still a fan. She does keep up with the so-called Rogue One universe. I wouldn't be surprised if she watched Andor Season 1 and is very invested, and if you ever feature in Star Wars, that will forever be the character you're associated with. And even though Felicity's moved on, I think forever we will see her as Jyn Erso. She was fantastic in that film, one of the best female characters of the Disney Star Wars era. Again, just my opinion. I'd love to see more of her, but the difficulty is with the Andor show, that's not the story Tony Gilroy seems to want to tell. And secondly, apart from another spin-off of Rogue One that takes place beforehand, since Jyn Erso died in Rogue One, there's very little space for any content afterwards. In fact, there's no space. Her sacrifice for the rebellion was mighty and forever appreciated. In a way, the Andor show is giving us more revolutionaries, new ones, who change the galaxy for the better, even if they never live to see that sunrise, as Luthen said. Jyn, Nemik, Marva, I'm sure we're gonna have so many more in Season 2, and speaking of Nemik, I've been working on a video about him for a while. I find the politics of this time period absolutely fascinating. I remember Andor being described once as anti-fascist art, and that is very much what it is. Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, but until the next one guys, may the Force be with you always.